If you are struggling with shoulder pain or you have a restriction in overhead mobility and things like putting boxes on top of the shelves or gym related movements like back bridges or handstands or overhead squats or any other overhead movement, then you might want to try these two tests to see if your shoulder mobility is actually adequate in order to do those types of exercises. And if it is adequate, maybe you could use these exercises in order to build more strength and mobility in your shoulders so you can feel more stable and you have less pain when you're doing these movements. So the first test we're going to want to do, which I'm going to show here, is what you want to do first is you want to, one arm at a time, bring your hand overhead to see if you can passively, so you're not trying to actively pull yourself down, but just to see if you can passively touch your hand to the floor. And also try to take note of any discomfort in your shoulder while you're doing this. So if you feel a big side to side difference with one shoulder compared to the other, or you feel very uncomfortable in one position compared to the other, then you might want to take note of that. And then for the second text, we want to bring both hands overhead at the same time. This changes the mechanics at your spine slightly. And then you can also note if you feel a side to side difference in this one. The main difference being is if you go overhead one arm at a time, you're mostly engaging shoulder flexion and thoracic rotation. So you're able to open up a bit more from the spine because you're doing it one side at a time. Versus when you do both sides at the same time, you're going to be using more thoracic extension. So your chest is going to go a bit more up towards the ceiling. That way you have more room for the shoulder girdle to move. And this is also a more stable position for your body to be in. So you want to take note of which of the two you feel like you're lacking the most. And then depending on that, you might want to try one of the two coming exercises. So for the first exercise, that's mainly going to focus on the first test, which is shoulder flexion and thoracic rotation. You're going to want to get into a seated position like this. If this position feels fairly uncomfortable on your ankles, knees, or hips, you can also simply bring your hips more forward and bend your knees less. So from this position, what you mainly want to look at is, first of all, that you don't open up the spine too much. So you want to keep your, in this case, the left shoulder, you want to keep the left shoulder pointed towards the floor together with the chest. And while doing the exercise, you also want to make sure you don't open up or close excessively. You want to keep about half of your, or more than half of your body weight onto your legs, and you want to keep the rest of your body weight onto your other supporting hand. So for this exercise, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to use the stick to passively assist us into a higher position to the point where we're getting a light stretch into the shoulder. So we should be looking for a light stretch either in the back side, maybe slightly in the front side, or in the armpit area. We also want to make sure the elbow is fully extended the whole time, or as extended as we can. The first thing we're going to do is just hold this passive position for about 90 seconds. So after 90 seconds, what we're going to do is we're going to first start off by trying to do this motion. So what he's going to try to do here is he's going to try to ram the stick through the floor. So when he's doing this, he should slightly engage about 20 to 30% intensity. He should engage his muscles. So he should no longer be experiencing any kind of stretching sensation, and this should be changing towards a tension sensation. So he now feels his muscles engaging rather than stretching. He's going to try to hold this for about 30 seconds. Once we're at the halfway mark, which is now, he can ramp up the intensity a little bit. So he can start going towards 40-50% intensity. This is already more than intense enough, especially if you're holding it for 30 seconds. And then what he's going to try to do after these 30 seconds are over, which is in 5 seconds, he's going to try to lift the stick off the floor. Now, you don't want to compensate when you do this. So if you can't lift the stick off the floor without twisting your chest open excessively, this is fine. He just twisted slightly, which is normal. You want to make sure that if you can't lift it off the floor, that you're not forcing it, and that you're trying to imagine that the stick is on a digital scale, and all you're trying to do is you're trying to lower the amount of weight onto the scale. So in this case as well, you can see as he's getting more fatigued, he can no longer lift the stick off the floor, which is completely fine. So right now, all he's thinking of doing is he's trying to think that the stick is on an imaginary scale, and he's trying to reduce the amount of weight onto the scale. So he's still feeling the same sensation as he did first when he lifted it off the floor, but the intention of the exercise itself has changed. So the internal intention, what he's trying to do is the same. It's just the exercise looks different. So we want to keep the stable position the whole time, not open up too much. And then now his 30 seconds are over. He can relax his arm. He can extend it fully again. He can just stay into the position, and he's going to hold this position for about another 30 seconds. If he wants to, he could even try to climb slightly higher, even if it's just a centimeter, to see if he can hold a slightly higher position for the last 30 seconds of passive stretching. And then after this test, what you want to do or might want to do is you could go back to the first position we tried in the assessment, and you could retry the first move to see if your shoulder assessment or your shoulder flexibility and mobility has changed anything. Yeah. So we just did the left side, and we're going to retest the test. So as you can see, there's a slight improvement in mobility here. So that position looks a lot better now than it initially did. And then for the second exercise, to put both arms overhead at the same time, we're going to get it into a child's pose position like they do in yoga. Same thing here. If your knees, ankles, or hips feel extremely uncomfortable in this position, you could also, once again, lean your hips forward slightly more in this position, and you could bring your ankles and knees further back in order to make the position more comfortable. Now what we're going to try to do in this position is first passively stretch again for 90 seconds. So we're going to try to just bring our hands as far away from our body as we possibly need in order to get a 3 to 4 out of 10 stretching sensation in the shoulder or in the upper back region. And then we're going to do a contraction again, just like we did in the last exercise. So in this case, what we're going to try to do is, again, the same thing. We're going to try to do shoulder extension. So what he's going to try to do is he's going to stay in the exact same position, but he's going to try to drive his hands into the floor. So when doing this, once again, the sensation of the stretch should be fading, and you should be feeling tension in those muscles instead, because you're trying to do the opposing muscle function. So he's trying to drive the hands through the floor. We're going to do this for about 30 seconds again. We're about almost halfway here, so he can ramp up the intensity slightly. So we started off with about 20 to 30%. Now we're going to go to 40, 50%. We don't want to go much higher than that, especially the first couple of times you're doing that, this exercise. And then after that, after the 30 seconds are passed, what he's going to try to do is, it doesn't look like he's doing a whole lot, but internally there's a lot going on, and he's thinking about a lot of things right now. What he's going to try to do is, he won't be able to in this position, but he's going to try to imagine that his hands are on a scale, on a digital scale, and he's going to try to put as little pressure on the scale as he possibly can, while staying in the same position, not letting the elbows bend, and not letting the position collapse as a whole. So right now, he's just trying to lift the hands off of the floor. So right now, he once again gets engagement from the muscles around the shoulder girdle, but he might also be feeling a stretching sensation in the upper back and shoulder girdle. So he's still trying to lift. We again started at 20, 30%. He can now ramp it up a little bit to 40, 50%. And then you're already starting to see some shaking going on, which is completely normal. He's just trying to put as little pressure onto the floor with his hands as he can, so he can improve the function of his shoulder here. And then after the 30 seconds are over, he can relax again, and he can even see if he can maybe put his hands slightly further away without changing the position. And then he can hold the stretch passively for 30 seconds once again. And then after the 30 seconds are over, you can again retest the first two tests and see if you see any improvements after that. Now, if you found this video helpful, or if you have any other shoulder related questions or problems, feel free to check out our channel. There might be more things on there that are shoulder related that might be more specific to your issue. Also, if you're looking for exercises more specific to a singular function of the shoulder, so let's say you're trying to specifically improve your thoracic rotation more, then we will be making separate videos on that, and you might want to check out the channel for that.